Hi BookTube! My name is Sarah and welcome to the Bookish Knitter. Today I am coming to you with my September 2022 wrap-up and stats video. So yay! September, I felt a little slumpy in September, but I actually managed to finish 18 books, so I'm very, very pleased with that. So in this video, in case you are new to my channel, I'm going to go through all of my stats. I do keep a bunch of stats for all the books that I read, and I kind of really love doing that. So I'm going to go through all that. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about my top 5 books that I read in the month of September. So let's jump in and get started. So as I said, guys, I read 18 books. For my Goodreads goal, I surpassed my Goodreads goal, I think in August. So I'm now 26 books beyond my goal. And that puts me at 176 out of 150 books finished. So I'm at 117% of my goal at this point. In terms of star rating, I had 2 3-star reads, 5 3.5-star reads, 8 4-star reads, 1 4.5-star read, guys, and 2 5-star reads. I had 2 5-star reads in the month of September. You know, for a month that I didn't read as much, I clearly read a lot of things that I enjoyed. So my average star rating for the month was 3.89, and that is up from August. August was 3.76, so that's pretty fantastic. So in terms of what I read, clearly, I was really participating in Autumn and More, which is a readathon that was hosted by, or created by, the Bookish Bryants. I was one of the co-hosts, and I read a ton, an absolute ton of romance in the month of September, and I loved it because I had been reading a lot of cozy mysteries. For those of you who are following the channel, I kind of fell down the rabbit hole of reading a lot of cozies, and I love cozy mysteries, don't get me wrong, but I was missing my romance books, and I'm so happy that in the month of September I was able to jump back into reading those again. So I read 11 contemporary romance novels, 2 romantic suspense, 1 inspirational romance, 1 inspirational romantic suspense, 1 chick lit, a middle grade fiction, and a mystery. And the mystery was actually a Nancy Drew. I had to think about it. I'm like, what mystery did I read? Oh yeah, it was a Nancy Drew. I like to keep track of how many category romances I read, which are the Harlequins, which you guys can see on my shelves. Over here, I have lots of them, and I like to keep track of how many of them that I read every month, and I read 44%, almost half of what I read this month was category romances, and you guys are going to see that when I give my top 5 books. I think 3 out of the 5 were Harlequin books, which is very exciting. So I read a heartwarming, a desire, a love-inspired, an intrigue, a romantic suspense, a special edition, a love-inspired suspense, and a medical romance. So I really did the gamut for all the books. Like I touched on almost all of the different lines, essentially. And that is partly because I am also doing this challenge to myself, where I'm trying to read 1 book from each line every month that is being published in that month. So that's why I read so many of them, or part of the reason why I'm reading so many of them. So in terms of the age range for the books, 16 books were geared towards an adult audience, 1 was YA, and 1 was middle grade. I read 1 book published in the 1940s, 1 in the 1980s, 1 in 2020, 1 published in 2021, and guys, 14 books. 14 of the books that I read, were published this year in 2022. Like, that's pretty spectacular. A lot of new releases were this month, 16 of the books, or how did I consume my books? 16 of them were on ebook and 2 were trade paperbacks. Guys, no audio. I didn't listen to a single audiobook in the month of September. And not saying that there's a problem with audiobooks. I like them. And I did listen to be fair, I did listen to a couple of the books during a couple sprints, like when I was doing reading sprints with friends. I would get a copy off of Hoopla or the library. So in a couple instances when I wanted to do some knitting or something and reading, I downloaded the audiobook, and during that sprint I listened for maybe an hour. But it wasn't a start to finish listen to an audiobook for anything. So that was, yeah, I was really reflecting on that the other day about the audiobooks, and I do still really like them, and I do still feel like they are fantastic, and you can really get so much from an audiobook, you know, depending on, like, you know, the narrator. And I hear so many people, they'll talk about, oh, the narrator was no good, and, you know, I just couldn't get through it for whatever reason. And that's kind of one of the drawbacks, right, when it comes to audio. So it was kind of nice stepping away from that and just physically reading again, and realizing how much I had missed just sitting with a book and just focusing on the book. And again, I'm not telling any of you that you're wrong if all you do is listen to audiobooks, because there are some people that's the situation. My mom is a prime example. She just can't sit and read a book, so she listens to audiobooks. And she really enjoys it, but a lot of the time, she'll just sit and listen to an audiobook, same as if she was sitting and reading, you know what I mean? She's not necessarily doing this, that, and the other thing. And again, I'm not saying that people are wrong who are doing those things, but it is kind of nice to step back and remember what it's like to just read a book. Does that make sense? And I kind of really like that. So I'm still debating on keeping my Audible subscription. I have 4 credits, so if I cancel the subscription, I have to use those 4 credits. So I have no idea what I'm going to use them on. I might just gift them to my mom and be like, here, find some audiobooks and help yourself, and then cancel my Audible. Right now it's on hiatus, like I have it on hold until December. So I've got a couple months to still figure it out. So anyway, I am rambling. 17 of the books that I read were full-length novels. 1 was a novella. This one I thought was really neat. 9 of the books that I read were part of a series. The other 9 were standalone. So perfectly split down the middle between series and not series. I thought that was kind of neat. Of the 9 books that were part of a series, 2 were new series I started, but 7 of them were part of ongoing series, which is very exciting. I read a grand total of 4,688 pages, which works out to about 156 pages a day. So that is not too shabby at all. So a couple of fun little random stats that I have here. My highest rated book on Goodreads. Now I had to double check this one because when I rated this book at first, I was the only person who had read it on Goodreads, like who had marked it as like read on Goodreads. And I thought, okay, is that my rating? So I checked, and no, there are 5 other people who had read this book as well and also gave it 5 stars. So the highest rated book this month on Goodreads was The Cowgirl and the Country MD by Mann, a 5.00 rating on Goodreads, you guys. I gave it 5 stars as well. I loved it. So stay tuned for a little mini review in just a few minutes. But everyone who's read this book has rated it 5 stars. So that's got to tell you something. The lowest rated book on Goodreads was Love on the Coast by Jennifer Snow. It came in with a 3.58 rating on Goodreads. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was cute. It was fun. I believe that one was the novella. And it's always hard to rate a novella because they're shorter. You don't get as much. My biggest issue with novellas is that I want more of the story. It's a good story and I want more of it. So that's why it kind of gets a little bit of a lower rating. The longest book I read in terms of page length was Snowbound with the Rancher by Kit Hawthorne. That came in at a whopping 368 pages. But that's a little bit of a misnomer, I think, because it is a love-inspired, it's not a love-inspired, it's a heartwarming novel. And the heartwarming novels, when they're published, are published as a large print edition. So if they're large print, the page count is going to be higher. And it's even the page count that's listed for the Kindle or ebook edition. It's the same as for the print book. So I think that's a you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily the longest book, but that's what Goodreads has labeled as the longest book, and that's what we're going to go with. The shortest book, I already mentioned this one again, Love on the Coast by Jennifer Snow. The novella, the first book in the Alaskan something series. It had 56 pages. And it was a quick, cute little read. Didn't love it, though. Didn't absolutely love it. So, what were my top 5 reads of the month, you guys? And as I always like to say, these are from my least most favorite to my most favorite. So, coming in spot number 5, we have My Year with the Billionaire by Rachael Stewart. This is one of the last books, the second last book that I read in the month of September, so it slotted into that spot just so perfectly. Gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's an inheritance type romance with a man and a woman, Summer and Edward, who both inherit the Scottish estate, and in order to get the estate, they have to live together for a year, and they knew each other when they were much younger, and they had a little summer fling, and it was a really, really good story. I liked it a lot. Please do yourselves a favor and pick this one up. Coming in spot number 4 was Snowbound with the Rancher by Kit Hawthorne, which I just mentioned as one of the longest books, or the longest book of the month. I gave this book 4 stars as well. This is definitely a Christmas story. It takes place in Texas during a freak snowstorm, and our female lead, whose name I cannot remember right now, she is, I think it's Macy or Maisie. She is living on this, like, she's new to this community, and there's a rancher who's, I think his name is Dirk, and he backs up against her. So, like, their properties, like, share a fence line, essentially. And there's this horrible storm, and they end up meeting, and they're not exactly friendly at first. They kind of butt heads a lot. And then they end up kind of being stranded together, hence the title of the book, Snowbound with the Rancher, and learn to kind of coexist, and they start liking each other. This is a heartwarming novel, so there is absolutely no adult content in this book at all. It is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Please pick it up and read it. Coming in spot number 3 is A Line in the Sand by Teri Wilson. This is the second book in the Turtle Island series, I think it's called. I want to say Turtle Bay, but I think it's Turtle Island. This one was super, super cute. So it's about a woman whose job is to dress up like a mermaid and work at this aquarium in this small town called Turtle Beach in the Carolinas. I can't remember if it's North or South Carolina. And this guy by the name of Max, her name is Molly. Yeah, Molly. Because I kept wanting to refer to them as Mike and Molly, like the TV show, but it was Max and Molly. So Max has inherited, in a way, this aquarium from his great uncle. I think it's his great uncle. Because his great uncle's retiring now. And so he's taking over, and the aquarium is kind of bleeding money at this point. So he fires Molly. And the whole town is up in an uproar about him firing her. There is kind of a hate-to-love relationship going on between the two of them. There's a bunch of older people who are meddling in their business. This involves dogs. It's a great, great story. It's a clean story as well. There's no adult content in this one either. That's what Teri Wilson is kind of... I don't want to say that's what she's known for, but that's what she writes. She writes sweet romances. And I really, really enjoyed this one. I thought it was super, super cute. Coming in spot number 2, The Cowgirl and the Country MD by Mann. This was the one of the 5-star reads that I had. I already mentioned this one very briefly as the highest rated book on Goodreads. Guys, this book was so good. This book was so good. Please just stop what you're doing and go and purchase this book. If me and a bunch of other people on Goodreads think that this is worth 5 stars, it means you need to read it now, please. So essentially this is the story of 2 characters whose names I cannot remember. I should have written this down. And she is a cowgirl. She works at this, like, the Top Dog. It's part of a series. I think it's like the 5th in the series, but you can read it completely as a standalone. And she works there as kind of an equine therapist. Like, she doesn't give therapy to the horses. She uses the horses for therapy for other people. I'm sure you're all familiar with what an equine therapist is. And he is a doctor. And he is just taken custody recently of his grandchildren. So he's a granddad, which I just lived for. His wife passed away a few years earlier from an aneurysm, and then his son and daughter-in-law died in a boating accident. So he now has custody of the 2 grandchildren. The daughter's name, the grandson's name is Gus. I want to say her name is Aubrey, is the little girl. I can't remember. Anyway, they're delightful. When kids are involved in a story, it's often difficult to have that, like, fine line of them being in the story not enough or them being in the story too much. And this line was walked perfectly. Like, they were in the story just the right amount to be in the story that it made sense. Like, he was really focusing on the children. Like, he was trying to get to know them better, and that's why he took them to this ranch for a vacation. And then he ends up meeting her. And he's really torn because he wants to spend time with her, but he also has his grandchildren. So, like, there are a couple times when they go on dates that he leaves the grandchildren with, like, a daycare provider at the, or a babysitter at this ranch. And it made sense. Like, I have read stories, and I'm sure we've all read romance novels that involve children. It's like, the couple go out, well, where's the kids? You know, who's looking after the kids? And nothing is, it's mentioned enough, but not too much, if that makes sense. So, I loved this one so much. This just made my heart so happy. I love the fact that our main character's, like, he is, I think, 49 and she's 40. Fan-freaking-tastic. Read this book. It was fantastic. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But my number 1 read for the month, I just talked about this one in my most recent weekly reads. Actually, I just talked about it about 10 minutes ago because I'm filming these videos back to back, is Someone for Everyone by Tracy Corbett. This book is being released this week. I think it actually comes out today, the day that this video is going to go up. And this is the 3rd book in a series, but you do not have to have read the first 2 books. This is the story of Kate and Calvin, and the 2 of them meet by chance. She is kind of going through a really rough patch, so is he. I don't want to get too much into it because literally I just talked about it in a video. So go back and maybe check out that video for more of my thoughts on it. But this takes place at Christmas time. They are both, like I said, kind of dealing with stuff. Well, this is a romance. Romance is not the central focus of this story. Them finding more about themselves and how they're going to continue on with their lives with all these things that have changed for them is what the focus of the story is, and I absolutely loved it. There is another group of old people playing matchmaker, which is clearly a catnip thing for me. Anytime I hear that, I want to read the book, and clearly I love it because 2 of the books this month had elderly people playing matchmaker, and it takes place, like I said, at the holidays, but there's like a ghost aspect as well with this town and this old folks home being potentially haunted. I loved it. It just edged out the Cowgirl and the Country MD. I mean, like, I could flip-flop them very easily. I would say both of them are in my #1 spot. But yeah, this book was fantastic. Please give it a read. So anyway, guys, that is all that I have for today's video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below what was your favorite book that you read in the month of September, and what was your least favorite book that you read in the month of September. That's always fun to know as well. So anyway, guys, until next time, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.